Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, The Power of OpenEdge 11.7. This is Colleen Smith, for those of you that didn't recognize my voice. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. And thank you so much for joining us. It's really exciting to be able to introduce you to OpenEdge 11.7. I'll be joined today by two of my colleagues, Rob Straight from Product Management and Tanya O'Connor from Product Marketing. So, with that, what I want to do is first start off by talking about the OpenEdge mission. Now, some of you might be saying, yeah, Colleen, let's get to the good stuff. Let's get to 11.7. The reason why I wanted to bring this up is because there have been a number of changes. Some of you might be more aware than others, but in November of this past year, we got a new CEO. And with that new CEO, I have to say Yogesh Gupta has brought a new resurgence and a new emphasis on OpenEdge. He has two key components of his strategy going forward. The first is absolutely to strengthen the core. And obviously, OpenEdge is a key part of the organization and a key part of our core product suite. The second part is to look at what the future of enterprise application development looks like. And so from an OpenEdge perspective, I just want to make sure that we revisited what has been and continues to be the OpenEdge mission. We're going to continue to simplify the development and delivery of mission-critical business applications. This actually has been our mission statement since the very beginning. And so we're going to make sure that we continue to deliver products that are highly innovative, that are easy to use, and can rapidly be implemented. And the other thing is we want to make sure that we're providing all of you, our customers and partners, what you need to make sure you're successful in the future. Now, you're going to hear a lot of great announcements, and you're going to continue to see that Progress is going to invest not only in OpenEdge, but all of our core products, but we're also going to be driving innovation and looking at next generation application development. So I ask all of you to continue to stay in touch with us. Make sure you reach out to your account managers, make sure you reach out to your partner managers, or reach out to any of us on the OpenEdge team and ask questions, get involved, and stay involved with us from an OpenEdge perspective. Because what I want to do is now talk to you a little bit about our commitment to you. Obviously, I'm asking that you stay committed to us and that you spend time and make sure that you understand where we are. All of you have joined this webinar today and are wanting to understand what we're delivering as part of OpenEdge 11.7. What we want to do and what our commitment to you is that we're going to constantly and continuously be striving. We know you have choices, and we are always working to never give you a reason to leave as a partner, as a customer, or as just a member of the OpenEdge family. And what we need to do then is constantly innovate. So we're going to be making sure that we're delivering you. And I think you'll hear today some really, a lot of effort has gone into the delivery of 11.7, and you'll hear about what's coming next as well. But it's really important that we continue to deliver a very secure, future-proof platform to enable scalability, availability, and accessibility in this new digital age. We need to be consistent. We have to be keeping pace with quality as well as technology expectations. And you'll see a continued investment as well as an increased investment in our ability to be able to support you as OpenEdge customers and partners. What we also have to make sure is that we provide you with continuity. And this means that you need to be able to leverage your existing investment with OpenEdge, but also enable you to take advantage of any new products, new market opportunities, or new technologies. The other thing we've heard loud and clear, and I think you'll hear from Rob today, really a good first step towards this is we know that in this today's world, you have to always be on. So we need to deliver to you continuous operations. 24 by 7 by 365 today is an absolute requirement. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And so this is what I'm committing to you to be the OpenEdge commitment and where we see ourselves going. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to Tanya, and she'll talk and get into the details now about what we're delivering today as part of OpenEdge 11.7. Tanya?
Thank you, Colleen. OpenEdge 11.7 powers the ability to deliver the world's best business applications. With OpenEdge 11.7, we focus on three primary business and technology challenges. The first being high availability, scalability, and securability. We're going to first take a look at scalability. In this world of vast accumulation of data and the dependency on that data to be accurate, organizations have a number of data sources and repositories and data warehouses that they need to make sure are aligned and in sync in terms of visibility into the business. So what we're offering today with OpenEdge 11.7 is the ability to track and save changes within the OpenEdge database known as Change Data Capture. This minimizes the time and effort and costs in updating multiple data sources, and it increases the accuracy of that data across those multiple data sources. So when you think about things like operational efficiency and financial systems and analytics, it's really important that the data that is entered within the OpenEdge database system matches all of that data across the organization. So Change Data Capture allows us to quickly identify, track, and save all the changes within the OpenEdge RDBMS. It's very easy to configure and go, which means it requires zero application changes and zero downtime. Rob now is going to provide you with the details of the functionality within OpenEdge CDC.
All right, thank you, Tanya. So, we're very excited about this change data capture capability. It's a great step forward to make our database more scalable and to provide you new features and capabilities that you'll find very useful. So the main idea here is let's track when change happens to individual data records within the database. Now, the underlying detail from a technology perspective is anytime there's a change in your database record, we're going to store that in a table within your database. And then you can configure the system in whatever way makes sense for you to capture whatever information you would like. So for instance, you might simply say, I'd like to note that a record has changed, and that's it. And we'll record that fact. You may also want to know what exact fields have changed within that record. So you can specify that those fields could be captured and stored as part of the change data record. So it's all highly configurable. I will note that it does not require any changes to your application. This is all database configuration. Once configured the way you want it, we can then continuously track changes. And then at some point in time, you will probably want to go to that database and query it to find out what records have changed with the goal of actually pulling things out of the database and putting them somewhere else. So what's the primary use case? Why would you want to do this? Many people want to get information out of their transactional database, their production database, and offload it to a different system. Think of it as a data warehouse, for instance, or some other system where they may want to do reporting, they may want to do BI, many reasons why they would do that. So you can see in this diagram that change data capture is part of the database and configuration of the database. You would then do some sort of a data extraction, which is querying the table, which stores those change data records. You might do ETL kinds of things where the E is the extract, T is transform. You may want to transform the data in some fashion. And then, of course, you're going to load it into the repository, the target repository that you have. All right, so that is change data capture. So with that, we will then go on to the next topic, and I'll hand it back to Tanya.
Thanks, Rob. As Colleen mentioned, continuous operations, or the idea of always being on, is imperative within business today. Customer experience and the business demand that users expect to be able to access information and data whenever, at any time, at any course of the day, means that there's a great deal of pressure that's placed on IT now. They have to make sure that systems are always available to those users, excuse me, and those customers. It is not an acceptable act of business today to say that a system is down, even for mere maintenance. So what we've done is we've included two new features within OpenEdge 11.7 that help to address both the idea of maintaining the system without having to take it down, as well as for unplanned downtime, because unplanned downtime costs even more to the business than maintenance in terms of data that's lost, in terms of revenue, or even market perception. Rob is going to go into the two specific enhancements that we have within OpenEdge 11.7. The first includes OpenEdge replication target synchronization. That's the idea that you can mitigate the challenge of being on 24/7 by 365. So it reduces your response time to unplanned outages, but it also allows for more flexibility in terms of your ongoing maintenance in the production environment. So Rob, would you like to give us a few more details on replication target synchronization?
Yep, sure. So as part of our replication and replication plus products, you are already replicating out to at least one target database, possibly two. And what is the challenge? If your primary goes down, or if you want to take it down for maintenance, one of those two targets can become the primary, but then it's got nothing to back it up, right? So you now have a single point of failure in that situation. So in the diagram here, you can see a very typical scenario where the source is replicating out to two targets. So should the primary go down for whatever reason, and it may be due to some kind of failure in equipment, it may be a power failure, or really if you want to do some maintenance on that particular system, you may choose to bring it down in a maintenance interval. What happens is that one of the targets now can become the primary, and it has knowledge of the second target. This is the new innovation. So that target can now be the primary. It's now replicating to the other target, and that can continue for as long as you need. You now have protection that if the second target, not the new primary, now goes down, you still have one more system that's got the data that you need. So, it makes things much more secure and reliable and robust. When the time comes for the original primary to go back online, either it's been repaired or the upgrades have taken place, then you can easily shift and transform back into the original configuration where you have the primary source database that's replicating to the two separate target databases. So it gives a lot of flexibility there. The second feature around high availability has to do with index activations. So as you know, when you want to add a new index into your database, a couple things have to happen. The database has to be updated, and then the application may or may not be able to take advantage of that new index without coding changes. So if you have dynamic queries, then any new index you add can be immediately used and effective. More typically, however, you're doing static queries, and static queries ultimately are going to require some coding change to tell the ABL application that there's a new index that it can take advantage of. Now, it's very common for organizations to want to go ahead and load up the new indexes in their system prior to making the update to the ABL code. It's just a staging kind of a scenario where they can get the indexes loaded, get that all stabilized, and then upgrade the ABL code at some point later in the time during a maintenance window, maybe on the weekend. So online index activation simply says that at any point in time, without taking your database down, you can create and install and add a new index. Again, that index would be immediately available to dynamic queries. But if you don't have dynamic queries, then at some point after that, you would need to update your ABL code so that the static queries can start to take advantage of the new index. All right, Tanya?
Thanks, Rob. The third business challenge and technical challenge that OpenEdge 11.7 helps to address is the issue of security. As we all know, security is prevalent within the marketplace today. There are organizations and breaches of these organizations that is being filtered throughout the media on an ongoing basis. But there are two things to consider in terms of application development from a security perspective. It's obviously securing that data, making sure that the application cannot be accessed, but there's also the component of using security to increase your competitive advantage, especially particularly as an ISV or application provider. The idea that you have an application that is built on the latest standards increases the interest of customers in using your application. So let's take a look at 2016 and the impact of security breaches. In 2016, there were 454 breaches at the enterprise level. That means that there were 12.7 million records that were exposed. The average financial loss to an enterprise organization due to those types of breaches is $861,000. Now, taking a look at small to mid-sized businesses, there tends to be a fallacy in that hackers are most only interested in the enterprise type organization, and that SMB organizations tend to be secure because really who is interested in the data that comes from a smaller type organization? And the reason why that fallacy exists is because the media focuses on the large enterprise breaches that occur. They talk about the Targets and the LinkedIns of the world. They don't necessarily talk about the impact that's happening at the SMB level. 62% of all breaches occurred at the SMB level last year, and that was a 30% increase since 2013, 10% a year. The average financial loss to an organization is $86,000, and there are a number of things that add up to that $86,000, and here are just a few. The first is improving the infrastructure. So obviously there was a weakness within the infrastructure that caused the breach. You have to first identify where that occurred, and that may or may not be a simple task. But even once doing so, you need to improve that infrastructure so that doesn't happen within the future. Then there's the training aspect of it, and that's not just from a development or an IT perspective, it's really corporate wide. When you have a holistic security strategy, you need to make sure that everybody within the organization understands the risks of the different tasks that they do. For example, somebody within finance may not realize that exposing data to a vendor could really put the company at risk. So there's a huge training aspect that has to occur. There's obviously the public relations and the market impact. And a SMB organization may not be able to bounce back from a public relations perspective as well as an enterprise organization might, just because they do not have the savviness to be able to manage that. The market impact is that of customers, vendors, partners that maybe no longer want to do business with your organization because it's just too much of a risk for them. As in any type of vulnerability or risk assessment situation, there are insurance premiums that companies take on to make sure that they can offset any costs of some sort of damage. So now today organizations have insurance and the premiums may go up if there's a breach. And then of course there's the regulation fines, and regulation fines can occur at a local, state, federal level, and then if you're a global organization, you also run the risk of multiple countries assessing regulation fines on you. We have one new technology that's available within OpenEdge 11.7, but it also takes advantage of a technology that was released a few years ago. OpenEdge Authentication Gateway is the ability to be able to ensure identity management. In essence, the right users get the right access to the right information. Now, it's built upon the Progress Application Server for OpenEdge, and the Progress Application Server for OpenEdge, also often referred to as PaaS for OE or PaaS for OpenEdge, is built on a number of industry standards. And Rob is going to go ahead and give us an overview of both OpenEdge Authentication Gateway and how it leverages PaaS for OE.
All right, thank you, Tanya. So I'm going to try to draw a little bit of an analogy here. The idea, of course, is we're trying to create the most secure environment we can for the OpenEdge infrastructure. And this is all about identity management and protecting your assets and resources from users who may be not authorized to make use of perhaps the database, the business logic in your app server, and so on. So let's think about traveling between countries. Anytime you enter a new country, they're going to want to validate who you are, right? And that's through immigration's passport control. So for this analogy, let's assume that the passport control is to protect access not going into a country, but getting access into the OpenEdge database. So we have the OpenEdge Authentication Gateway, and you can kind of think of that as the gatekeeper. Perhaps this gentleman who's examining the passport, you can think of the Authentication Gateway as that playing that role. Who is the individual presenting themselves to be identified, and are they valid? And should they be allowed access into the environment? Now, if we look at the overall environment, again, from an OpenEdge perspective, we have clients that are trying to gain access into the application server and or database. We have application servers who want to connect in. We have SQL Server. We have people. We have browsers. So a lot of people are trying to gain access to your system. If they're authorized and authenticated, great, you want to let them in. If not, you want to make sure there's no possibility of them getting to your secured information. So every one of these will then touch the Authentication Gateway. And I will mention that the Authentication Gateway is an optional component. We're not forcing you to make use of it. But if it makes sense in your environment, then once you've turned that on, every single person that wants to try to get into your system has to be authenticated first. Now, a little side note here is that we are not trying to replicate things that happen in existing user authentication systems like Active Directory or LDAP or many of the other systems that are out there. We do work with them because we're not doing password management and we're not locking out accounts if you have, a certain number of failed passwords, but we'll interact with them to help to identify and authenticate the user. Once a user's been authenticated, the authentication gateway will then create a security token. It's encrypted, it's tamper-proof, it's passed around within the environment, and that will then tell the rest of the environment that this person is okay to come in and access. We've also made some changes in the environment that says that if you're using this particular feature, the database will simply not accept any connections unless they've been authenticated through the authentication gateway. Now, the last thing I'll say about this is how do you get this capability? We have actually bundled in the authentication gateway with the Progress application server for OpenEdge. So if you get the Progress application server for OpenEdge, then you can get this feature at no additional charge. For those of you that are not ready or able to move to the new Progress application server at this point in time, we do also offer the authentication gateway as a standalone product that you can purchase separately. Okay, so what are kind of the key benefits of all this? As I've mentioned, it's going to redirect all of the access requests to this central location so that users can be authenticated properly and we can block out people that are not authorized to come into the system. One of the goals here is we want to make sure that it's challenging, if not impossible, for someone to write clients that can circumvent the security authentication. So the database has been updated to block access, direct access, and it's waiting for the proper security tokens from the authentication gateway. We do make use of the Progress application server, and in particular the Spring security that comes with it. Spring security is widely used in the industry, used daily by millions and millions of people. It's very solid, secure, being updated all the time as new vulnerabilities are being exposed. And then finally, for the organizations that are subject to various regulations, governmental regulations, having this kind of capability then supports being compliant with those regulations. And ultimately, we're trying to minimize your business risk by making it difficult, if not impossible, for people to hack your system, to get at things that you do not want them to get access to. All right, and then there's just a few other things we're going to talk about in the security realm. One is OpenSSL. So I think people are familiar with SSL and the follow-on standard TLS. This is the encryption that happens when you want to transmit information over the wire. We've done a lot of work in the last 2 years to get as up-to-date as possible with the latest releases of these libraries, which have all the latest fixes for vulnerabilities that have been discovered over time. We are upgrading our version of OpenSSL, again, just to make sure we have the most current up-to-date software available. The vulnerabilities that have been exposed have been repaired, and you can feel as secure as possible. And I think looking forward, you'll see us updating our SSL, in a timely fashion, most likely with every release. And then we've done a couple things that are more usability features around security. This all has to do with the certificates that get generated. So for people that work in this space, there are organizations that will validate who you are and then issue certificates that prove that that's who you are. Those get used at runtime on your web pages and websites to, in a sense, say, yes, I can guarantee I am who I say I am. It gets a little bit cumbersome, though, when you have many servers and you have to issue a certificate for each one of the servers. A lot of people have moved to wildcarding of these certificates where you can have a single certificate that says within this domain, anything with a domain name, I will wildcard and we can make use of. We can also, through that same kind of a process, specify within the certificates an alternative host name should the primary host not be available. The last piece is server name indication. This is really geared towards virtualized systems where you may have a kind of a generic virtual system that you spin up multiple instances of. Each instance may have a host name that's different from all the others. So when someone connects to you, they can then specify, I am trying to talk to this particular host name, and that's how they make the connection with the right certificate. And the last piece I'm going to mention, it's related to security. It's not exactly a feature of 11.7, but it is a feature we're delivering with the 11.7 release. And this has to do with the license configuration files. So as a reminder, when people do installations, they have to obtain their serial number and a control code from the order that they've placed. They run through the installation process and they type in that information. Now we do have ways to automate that somewhat where they don't have to do the typing, but you do have to go through that process. Once you've completed the installation process itself then creates a configuration file. That configuration file specifies which products you're authorized to use, licensed to use. Now, the challenge here is that that is the one and only way to create a configuration file. And there are use cases that many of you have run across where that becomes a little bit of a challenge. So for instance, if someone is standing up a production system and maybe doesn't have ready access to the licensing, which would be the control codes and serial numbers that they need, to save time, quite often they will stand up the system using maybe development licenses as a temporary fix just to get things installed with the intent of coming back and putting in the proper licenses. Now, when they want to come back and put in the proper licenses, of course, now they have to run through a whole new installation, which is kind of time consuming simply to get the right control codes in there. So we have taken a step forward to create the ability to generate the configuration files using a new customer self-service portal. You can see a little diagram at the bottom here. What that means is you go to the portal, you can see the orders that you have placed. There may be one order, there may be multiple orders. You can then pick and choose from those orders which of the products you'd like to put into a individual configuration file and then generate that file. Once that file is generated, you could go to any system that's already been installed and simply drop in that file to, in a sense, replace the serial numbers and control codes that may already be there with the appropriate ones that you'd like to have. So it saves all the time and effort having to uninstall and then reinstall the product simply to upgrade the licensed products that you have available to you. And I will also mention that although we are releasing it now with the 11.7 release, it does actually work with OpenEdge 10.2b and higher. So I think this is a great feature, and I think a lot of people find this a great time saver when dealing with their control codes. All right, and the last piece I'm going to mention is all about community and how we deal with kind of the community enhancement requests. I think most of you know that we take input for enhancement requests from a variety of sources, but the place we really like people to go is Progress communities. And within the forums, there are places where you can place your ideas. Ideas are simply enhancement requests. But we do gather requests from many other sources anytime we deliver roadmaps, anytime we meet with customers and partners, when we do competitive analysis, our user groups, a lot of different places. The key message here is that we do listen to you. So when you ask for enhancements, we do listen. And so in 11.7, I've outlined the top 10 features that we have implemented that came directly from the community. Now, I'm not going to go through all of them in detail. I'll pick out just a few kind of my favorites. Certainly, object-oriented ABL performance. We want to be as performant as possible, and with every release, we try to make improvements. Item number 2, we've had a lot of requests for variations to the compilation process to enforce either coding standards or practices, maybe to help you identify unused code or unused variables, that sort of thing. So with 11.7, we've begun that process. We've put in a mechanism that is generic, that allows us to have compiler options. And again, these are options where we don't force you to use them. And then we've built a number of these options in. So, and we'll see over time, we'll continue to add additional compiler options over time based on input by you, our community. Number 4, we've put in a debugger for the Progress application server for OpenEdge. So that's been a little bit overdue, but we've got that in there. Number 6, I think, is interesting. We've had a lot of requests for how do you handle the stop condition? And the feedback has been we'd really like you to treat the stop condition just like any other error that we handle through the error handling mechanisms that we have in place. So we've made some enhancements to now treat stop conditions just like any other error. And you can then trap it, catch it, do whatever you need to do with it. It can be percolated up through the stack just like you would any other area. Number 8, we continue to do work with our SQL compliance. As we all know, you can access the OpenEdge database through our own mechanisms or through SQL. We are fully SQL compliant. So we continue to make enhancements to make sure we are as compliant with SQL as possible. In this case, the core SQL 2011 is, the version that we're shooting for. And we're publishing out some white papers that explain exactly where we are and are not compliant. The last one has been a small item, but a thorn in some people's sides. If you're using web client, at startup time, the first thing it does is it checks the server to see if there are any updates to the application code. And if there are, it's going to download those. If for some reason the web client can't connect to the server, maybe the connection is down, in the past, that means that execution stops. You cannot proceed any further. Well, there's many people that say, well, look, I don't really care if there's an update. I'd like to continue running, and that sometime in the future that connection will be reestablished, and great, I'll get the updates. So we've made an option that says if the web client cannot connect to the server, it can go ahead and continue operating the web client even though it has not done the update. So these are just some examples of community-driven features that we've implemented, again, all with the mission of listening to you, our customers, and making sure we're satisfying the things that you need. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Tanya.
Thanks, Rob. As you can see, OpenEdge 11.7 is packed with enhancements, and these, what we've highlighted today, are really just a few. What I wanted to make sure you knew is that we also, in keeping in line with our goals to make our products easy to implement and rapidly implemented, have updated a number of courses with the OpenEdge 11.7 enhancements, and you can access these really quickly and easily at the URL at the bottom of this page. So how do you get OpenEdge 11.7? The best way is to try out the 60-day test drive. There are 2 versions of it that are accessible at www.progress.com/trial-OpenEdge. The first is in the cloud, and the second is a download that you can run in your local environment. So now let's run to Q&A. We have quite a few questions, so we're going to go ahead and get started, but first, I wanted to introduce Brian Bowman, one of our senior PMs for OpenEdge. He's joined us as a special guest to be able to answer many of the questions that we have on CDC and replication target synchronization. Let's get started. Colleen, I have a question here for you. The statement is that OpenEdge support needs revamping, and this, I think, was in line with the OpenEdge commitment information that you were sharing. Is there a plan to do so, and if so, can you share some details?
Yep, absolutely. Actually, it's actually a great question. I didn't seed this question, but when I talked about the fact that our strategy is now very focused on the core, strengthening that core, what I didn't mention, and maybe I should have, is that we have had some organizational changes as well. And one of the organizational changes we have joined us as a new executive. Some of you might have met him at the partner conference, John Ainsworth, and he is our Senior Vice President of all core products. And actually, one of the organizational changes is we've now brought support underneath the same individual and is actually joined with development. And so I think if one of the questions is we're feeling that maybe support hasn't been able to address all of the questions as quickly as maybe some of our customers would like, one of the things that I would comment is that we've now brought the support organization and development organization together. And we think this absolutely will help to strengthen our ability to support our customers and partners with the core products. So now underneath a single individual, we have product management, product marketing, product development, and product support, all working together in the same organization. So I believe this will in fact help to strengthen our support capabilities.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. I hope that answers the question. If not, feel free to log in another comment. I'm going to jump to CDC because we have a number of questions on CDC, and I believe, Brian, you are the expert on CDC, correct?
I don't know if I'm the expert, but I can answer the questions.
Okay, let's start with a couple of basic questions. The first is CDC available in Workgroup database?
And the answer to that is absolutely. It's available for the Enterprise database, the Workgroup database, and it's also included in the Advanced Enterprise Edition, RDBMS.
Okay, great. So the next question is, what is the difference between CDC, OE replication and Pro 2. There seems to be some overlapping in terms of the technology and the solution that they offer.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and clarification would be great. So one of the things you need to understand is what are the use cases and what's the business case for each of the different products. And I'll start with OpenEdge replication because it's probably the cleanest to talk about, and it is designed for disaster recovery replication. It is database level replication from one location to another. And we can see that as we went through the target replication synchronization discussion here. So that's OpenEdge replication. Pro 2 replication really gives you the ability to do replicate and take data and move it from an OpenEdge data source database to another database. And that other database can be Oracle, SQL Server, or OpenEdge. So that's what Pro 2 replication does. It's not designed for disaster recovery. It's not meant for disaster recovery. So with Pro 2, you need to be able to identify those records that changed within the database. And that's where change data capture comes into play. So Pro 2 will actually make use of change data capture in the near future. So change data capture is the internal process to be able to identify changes to a record in a database and then store those changes so that tools like Pro 2 for replication or an ETL tool, enterprise level ETL tool, could make use of those changes. So that's the difference between the three products.
Okay, great. And it's my understanding that Pro 2 version 5.0 is due for release at the end of this month. That will take advantage of CDC as well as some other enhancements. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you. I'm going to jump to replication target synchronization. We have quite a few questions there. Let's see. Is an online switch that will happen, or will users be kicked out of the system?
So with replication target synchronization, just like with the replication of the way it functioned before 11.7, when we fail that database over from the source to the target, the clients will be disconnected and they will have to connect into the target database. Okay. So they'll be bounced out just like they do today.
Okay.
So that is on our roadmap to change that as we move forward, but our first step is to be able to seamlessly fail over.
Okay. How is the traffic routed to the new primary or when you fail back?
Again, that traffic is at the client level. The client is going to have to reconnect back in. It's a little bit of an extension of the question we just asked.
Colleen, I'm going to ask you a question about OpenEdge Authentication Gateway. All right, the question is, we have multiple accesses to the OpenEdge database, Direct, ODBC, and App Server. We use mostly the App Server. Do we have to purchase Authentication Gateway separately for other access points?
Oh, okay. No. So as long as you're using it for an OpenEdge application, I just want to make the comment that the end user license agreement for Progress application server is only for use with OpenEdge applications. But if you're using it for OpenEdge applications, but there's different people or different ways in which the OpenEdge application is being accessed, as long as they're going through that app server and you're licensed for that app server, then you can use Authentication Gateway to authenticate any type of user, no matter where they're coming from. Absolutely. Again, the only limitation is that those users can access the database, they're licensed for that, and the fact that you're licensed at the PAS for OE capability. But absolutely, that would be the value of having a single secure token server, is that you want all traffic to go through that, so that anybody accessing that OpenEdge application, or specifically trying to get access to data in the OpenEdge database, you're authenticating and you know who they are and the fact that they should have access to it, whether it comes from ODBC, from a screen, from a report or query. That's absolutely the goal of the secured gateway.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brian, when secondary becomes primary in a disaster scenario, so this is a little bit of a combo in terms of technology questions. When secondary becomes primary in disaster scenario, does Authentication Gateway also get enabled automatically on the new primary?
Yes, so replication, any replication targets fall into the Authentication Gateway as well. So with that Authentication Gateway, with that failover from the source to the target, then when the target comes back up, it will become part of the Authentication Gateway as well. So good question, because they're combined in two different technologies, two different new technologies.
Okay, so again, another question on OpenEdge Authentication Gateway, and I think, Colleen, you talked a little bit about this, but just as clarification, you mentioned that PAS4OE is the underlying technology of Authentication Gateway. Do you have to purchase, are you only able to obtain Authentication Gateway through PAS4OE, or can you buy sole licenses?
All right, so if you have a license for PAS for OpenEdge, you're going to get access to the gateway. So if you are licensed for PAS for OpenEdge, then you have access to the gateway in 11.7 and going forward. So that's just so we're clear. Now, PAS for OE has been available prior to that, but you would actually have to actually upgrade to 11.7 to get this new secure token capability. However, if you don't want to move to PAS4OE, you want to continue to use your classic application server for your applications, but you are interested in this additional OpenEdge Authentication Gateway, we do have separate pricing capabilities and licensing just to license the Authentication Gateway. So you actually could license the Authentication Gateway for use for the secure token server and still use your classic app server. And that's one scenario. Or you could actually migrate your classic app server application logic and code to PAS4OE, and then by licensing PAS4OE for your entire application, you'd get access at no additional charge as long as you were licensed for your users with for the authentication gateway.
Great.
Hopefully, I didn't confuse people there.
No, I think that added to the clarification. So, Brian, we have another question on CDC, and it says, you mentioned that CDC is part of the Advanced Enterprise Edition, also known as AEE. Can you say more about what AEE is?
Absolutely. So the Advanced Enterprise Edition RDBMS is a database level above the Enterprise Edition, the Enterprise level, and it includes effectively all the plus ones that at least includes the functionality of all the plus ones that are available for the database. So it includes obviously CDC. It includes transparent data encryption or TDE. It includes table partition if you want to make use of table partitioning. It includes multi-tenant, the multi-tenant database functionality, and it includes OpenEdge management, and it also includes OpenEdge replication or replication plus. So that's what the Advanced Enterprise Edition allows you and gives you that capability all within a single licensing mechanism.
Okay, great. Thank you. And you can also find that information on our website. If you search for Advanced Enterprise Edition or OpenEdge EEE, you'll see all of the information per each of those plus ones on individual pages, but also how they work as a bundle. Okay, so let's see. Do you have anything, Colleen, that you wanted to mention that you think maybe we missed, or anything that you wanted to stress?
I think the only other comment I'd make, and where obviously we think that there's a lot of great functionality that has been included in 11.7. I just wanted to reiterate that this will in fact be the last of the 11 series. So 11.7, we will have service packs. We'll have definitely 11.7.1 and I think .2 and .3 probably.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll continue to do that. However, I guess the point I wanted to make is I think everyone should take a look, and Tanya, you mentioned that the download is available for eval. I think you should take a look at 11.7. What we'd love to work with you on is maybe you're not going to be able to implement or install and get things going with 11.7 right now, but work with your account managers on what the plan is, because obviously as we start to think about 2018 and moving to a version 12, we'd love to get everybody up on 11.7. So even if you're on an earlier version like 11.1 or 11.2 or 11.3, those versions, while they're still in the 11 series, we'll slowly start to retire them as part of our policy. And so from a life cycle perspective, we're going to not be adding new service packs, mostly just service packs going forward to 11.6, might have one more service pack, and then 11.7. So these are really going to be the current releases. So we think obviously there's enough reason to start to look at 11.7 based upon the new functionality that Rob mentioned and that you've asked questions about, especially, as Brian has talked about on the database side. We've really done a lot. There's a lot more to be done, but so I would just tell everyone to start to plan for it. Think about what does moving to 11.7 mean to you and your organization? And I would ask you to reach out to us and have us help you with that process. Obviously, we've got services team, we've got a product team, we've got our account managers that would absolutely love to help you with that process.
That's great, Colleen. Thank you. So it looks like GoToMeeting has sent quite a few over all at the same time. I was wondering where all the questions were. Here we go. So the first one, this one's actually interesting, Brian. Might be a trick question.
Uh-oh.
Is there any plan to increase the database block size in 11.8?
Well, that's an easy one for me to answer because, as Colleen just said, there's
There is
not
no
going to be
11.8.
11.8. So we do plan on increasing it 11.8, but there won't be 11.8, so we're not going to do that. So no. At this point in time, it is on our roadmap to discuss and investigate whether we include the database block size or not. It won't happen in obviously 11.8, and it won't. And pretty safe to say, initially in the 12.0 release, we won't be looking at that either. But we'll continue to investigate and determine where it has value and how much importance or how much performance gain we would gain from doing that type of an implementation.
Okay, great. Can you tell us, I'm not sure, Colleen, maybe you can answer this question, perhaps Brian. What are the new object-oriented ABL features included in 11.7?
I can take part of that. So that's actually an interesting point in that Rob went through a bunch of the features that we put in 11.7. This is by no means the complete list. The list is much longer, so I would encourage you to go read the new and revised features list for 11.7 to find out the details of what are in the OO stuff. Some serialization is being done on the OO side. That's the one specific one that I know of that was done in 11.7.
Yeah.
And that document, that's available on Community, correct?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's see. Online index activation. Does it turn off the index so a program couldn't select it while it is being built? Typically, you don't have to change code to use a new index. You just have to recompile a program.
Good question, and you're spot on with thinking about how it works. That index will not become available for you for an application to use, a dynamic query to use, until it's actually completely built and then it's activated. That's the last step we go through, is to actually activate it and make it available. So, and they're absolutely correct in that. Making use of that index, the only thing you have to do is to recompile your R code, unless, of course, as Rob said, you're running dynamic queries. Good.
Okay. Our security authentication is the OpenEdge Authentication Gateway and the Change Data Capture. Are they new products, or are they included in the existing products?
So I'll start with the Authentication Gateway. It is a new feature and included with the pass for OE. And as Colleen said earlier, it's also available as a standalone if you're not running pass for OE as your application server today. So that's pass for OE4, or that's the Authentication Gateway. For Change Data Capture, it's a new product. It's a new +1. Unless, good point. Unless, of course, you have the Advanced Enterprise Edition or the AEE RDBMS.
Right.
Yeah, that's I guess the reason why I'm sitting here mouthing it to Brian. But I just want to make sure we're clear, because I think what people are getting at is, well, so if I've been paying maintenance, what am I getting for my maintenance? So as we stated a couple of years ago when we came out with the Advanced Enterprise Edition as a bundle, if you have licensed Advanced Enterprise Edition and we come out with these new features, they will be included at no additional charge because you're paying maintenance on the Advanced Enterprise Edition. If you want to purchase it as a separate add-on item to Workgroup, which is the first time we've done a new feature, for example, for Workgroup, that would be an add-on component. If you've already licensed PAS for OE, a lot of people are like, well, what's the value of PAS for OE versus the classic app server? We had made the statement that new features will be included in PAS for OE. That's the reason why there was a little bit of an upcharge or uptick to move to PAS for OE. So if you are already licensed and you're paying maintenance on PAS for OE, this would be a new feature that you get as part of that. If you're on Classic, it doesn't work with Classic, but you can, as we said, we're not retiring Classic, but if you wanted this new capability, and as I said earlier, you want to just run Classic, but you would actually have to buy this component as part of PAS for OE. You'd just be buying the separate secure token component. You don't have to license the full PaaS for OE. You could just buy it as a separate component or module.
Okay. Thank you, Colleen. That helps in terms of clarification. And if you have specific questions that are unique to your situation, please reach out to your account manager. They can help to help you figure out what is the best tool solution for you.
Yeah, because obviously we have different business models and
Right.
pricing models. Because if somebody is, for example, a partner who's doing software as a service, it's very different. And we want to work with you and customize what does it take to let you take advantage of those capabilities and offer that as a service versus somebody who's a direct customer who might have an enterprise license agreement, for example. So definitely work with your account manager and we can help figure out what that means to you as a particular account, because as you know, we have so many different business models depending upon the relationship you have with Progress. We don't want that to stop you from taking advantage of some new capabilities.
Great. Brian, we have another CDC question here. Does CDC require creation of new tables based on what data we want to capture? How is CDC different from Progress Audit?
Okay, so two separate questions. CDC does create additional tables within the database, and as you go through and define CDC and set up CDC's policy, you identify where those tables go and set that configuration up. That's all done online, as we said. It's all capability online, and those are all in support of the CDC changes. So CDC actually captures those changes and stores them in shadow tables to your original production tables. So that's the first part of it. And the second part of this, the second question was,
how is it different from Progress
Oh,
Auditing?
how's it different from Progress Auditing? Very good. And this is something that a lot of people have asked. If you've looked at Progress Auditing, both from so Progress Auditing has a policy definition. You set up the policies within auditing, and then it goes off and configures it, and it captures at the transaction level auditing changes. Those changes are stored in a very different way in the OpenEdge database, and they're stored in such a way that it's very difficult for the ABL or SQL to be able to access that data without having to actually export it and configure it. The other thing with auditing is it is absolutely guaranteed non-refutable data. So there's a whole bunch of security mechanisms that come in place with auditing that are required for a true auditing system to work with that. Change data capture, on the other hand, as we write the data out, we write them out to very ABL or SQL friendly tables. We do a policy configuration conceptually this similar to the way auditing sets up policies. You create a policy and manage that policy. The interface and the application and the tools to be able to do that are completely different. In that OpenEdge Change Data CDC goes through OpenEdge Explorer or OpenEdge Management and the data administration console to be able to do that. So the storage of that, the actual internals and infrastructure of CDC is very different than auditing, and the data storage is very different as well. Much more user-friendly.
Next question. Does 11.7 still support a 32-bit version?
Two different answers to that. The first answer is 11.7 does not support Linux 32-bit. We discontinued Linux 32-bit support with 11.7. But on the Windows side, absolutely, we support 32-bit Windows clients, Windows OS and clients. The one exception to that is that we do not support Windows 2003 and XP with 11.7. Those 32-bit operating systems are no longer supported. And that comes from because of the way Microsoft is limited and cut off their support for it. And the fact that we are moving other technologies that rely on those that rely on the underlying OS, specifically .NET, requires that the operating system be newer as well.
Okay, great.
Good.
All right, so this is another security question. The question is it possible to use our own wildcard certificate with web speed in OpenEdge 11.6? If not, will this be available in 11.7? Do we know?
I believe that you can use it, but I am not sure. We would have to follow up on that separately.
So we'll do that. We'll make sure that we follow up on that question. And any other questions we do not get to by the top of the hour, we'll make sure that we follow up on.
Because it might also... Are they using PaaS for OE?
Yeah, it depends on the whole web suite configuration, 11.6, 11.7, and where they really doing
so it's a
it.
very account manager?
Let's do an individual follow-up on that.
Okay. All right. It says here, you mentioned enterprise-level ETL tools. Which of these tools are known to work well with OpenEdge RDBMS?
Good question. And we're going to get this question more and more often. So we've, with one of our products that we have, the Analytics 360 product, it actually embeds an ETL engine inside of the Analytics 360 solution. And that one happens to be Pentaho's PDI solution. So obviously we know that that works well with it. But since it's since the data and export is done at the for the ABL or SQL, any ETL tool that connects in through almost all the ETL tools that are out there today, the industry ones are all SQL based. So any SQL based tool can connect into the OpenEdge database through ODBC or JDBC and be able to work as an ETL tool. So I know Pentaho's works. There are a couple of other open source ones that we just lightly tested, and so we know that they work. Mm-hmm. And obviously the ABL is going to work with it as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you create a separate data area for CDC tables to take advantage of type 2 storage areas?
Yes, and the answer is yes, you can, and that's actually probably kind of a best practice. Is that we would recommend you create those type 2, put those areas off into their own type 2 areas for CDC. They require type 2 areas for the change tables, okay. So that's part of the configuration process and the setup process that you go through with CDC.
I have a few questions that are around the same vein. One is specific to CDC, but another one is just in general. So in implementing these new features, what is the performance impact? Do we have any data or numbers?
The performance testing that we've done has been specifically done around comparing replication triggers, which is the way that people historically and traditionally have done change type data capture, and comparing that to CDC. And what we found in our initial benchmarks is that CDC is twice as fast as replication triggers from that impact. So, and we've done some pretty basic or pretty detailed tests around comparing 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, a million records in terms of updates, and that's what we see is CDC is about twice as fast as replication.
Excellent.
Now, one comment I'll make is now that we've delivered 11.7, we do actually, as a change, one of the things we want to look at is doing some more benchmarking and performance testing with our partners and customers. So if there is anyone that's interested in working with us, obviously the challenge for us is that you really need an application. And we've got, from a testing perspective, we use some in-house testing applications, but there's nothing better than actually working directly with a partner or a customer on their application. And so I know there's a few of our partners that have already set up their own testing environment, and we're starting to look at working with them. This is something that John, Ainsworth, our new SVP, is very interested in doing. So if there is somebody out there that would like to actually work with us on some benchmarking and performance testing on 11.7, we would welcome that and actually let us know, and that might be something we could do together too.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So there is a question, when is 11.7 going to be available on the ESD, which is the electronic software download site? And it is available today. It was available as of Friday, and there are also evals that are available via the progress.com/OpenEdge homepage, where you can do a 60-day download of 11.7, either in the cloud or a download to your local environment. So check that out. Let's see. I have a question here about SQL compliance. Mm-hmm. Is it compliant with ANSI SQL? Yes. So SQL 2011 compliance, is it ANSI SQL compliant?
So ANSI SQL compliance is just a different level of compliance within the SQL environment. Mm-hmm. So what we have published is where in a white paper our development is published going through the SQL 2011 standards. We've published where we are standard or where we are compliant, where we're not compliant. So the ANSI question would be answered within in there as well.
Okay,
That's
great.
the place to go look for it.
So it looks like we are at the top of the hour. I didn't realize that it was so late. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We hope you found the information to be extremely valuable. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, you can reach out to your account manager. You can reach out to Brian or myself, Rob Straight, as well. We're happy to assist and provide as much information as we can. I hope you have a wonderful day, evening. Thank you.